What is the best way to grow an Instagram following for an OnlyFans model? Starting from absolute zero. This is far and away the single most frequently asked question that I get on this channel, and I wanted to make sure that when I did finally answer it, I did it right. So this video is a comprehensive guide. Everything you need to know to create and grow an Instagram following for an OnlyFans model from scratch. This video is aimed primarily at OnlyFans agency owners, but if you're an independent creator, everything I'm about to explain also applies to you. If this is your first time here, my name is Francis, and I'm the founder of Milky Media, an OnlyFans consultancy, product developer, and former management agency that has produced millions of dollars, millions of followers, and billions of views for OnlyFans creators and agencies around the globe. Really quick, I just launched a free Telegram community for OnlyFans creators and agencies. I still love it when people leave comments on my videos, but if you want real-time advice, I am on Telegram every day, posting tips, running polls for future video topics, and personally answering OFM questions. So if you want to get better at using social media to scale your OnlyFans pages, hit the link in the description and join us. Again, it's completely free. Now, I need to set expectations here, because I know some of you think this is going to be something like, do these TikTok dances with these viral sounds for guaranteed views. But this video is not a quick guide to scoring quick, cheap viral reels by copying trends or hacking our way to getting big view counts within our first few reels. And if that's your mentality about organic social, here's the reality check that you need to hear. A lot of OnlyFans management agencies came up during the golden era of COVID lockdowns, when every person on earth was horny, lonely, and had nothing to do but money to burn and time to kill. And you could put a wig and some fake tits on a baboon and build $1 million a month agency. I'm very sorry to report that that era of OFM is over. And if you aren't aware of that, this video will help reset your expectations. Instead, I'm giving you the knowledge and processes you need to build a strong, highly differentiated brand for your models. Think of it like I'm not giving you a recipe, I'm teaching you the principles of cooking so you can write your own recipes. The attention economy of today is totally different than 2019 to 2023, where if the girl was hot, it didn't really matter what her content was about. It is insanely competitive now, and it is only going to get more competitive over time because everyone in the world is getting better at making content. You're not just competing for eyes, ears, and clicks with other OnlyFans creators and agencies. You're competing with the entire social media ecosystem. So this video is a comprehensive, structured, and principled guide on how to build a dedicated following for an OnlyFans creator from scratch in 3 parts. First, I'll establish basic ground rules, what it actually means to start from zero. Second, I'll explain the fundamental principles you have to understand to build million-plus follower brands from scratch for your models. And third, I will explain the exact process for putting those principles in action to create strong, consistent growth, both in following and revenue. Basically, exactly how I would do it for a new model myself. If you watch this video and you pay attention from start to finish, you are going to have a better understanding of how to crush at organic social than 99% of your competition, and you'll be able to leverage that advantage to produce results that very few other creators or agencies can come close to over and over and over again. 1, it's a totally fresh Instagram account. 2, there are no secondary accounts or following from other socials that you can use to drive traffic to the page. This is an independent standalone page. And 3, no using paid ads or botted followers. We are talking about 100% organic growth. In this scenario, we'll assume that our hypothetical model is attractive, motivated, and ready to do whatever work it takes to win at social media. And we're going to create a go-to-market strategy from zero and build that hypothetical model, a functional, high-quality, differentiated brand that will result in consistent, sustainable follower growth, a dedicated fan base, and most importantly, lots and lots of money. Also, I wasn't originally going to cover this, but I'm sure some people are going to ask about stuff like account creation, mobile versus web, posting on proxies, phone farms, etc. I'm not a super technical guy. I don't know the answers to all those questions. I can only tell you exactly what we've done to produce our results, and it hasn't failed yet. So feel free to replicate it to the best of your ability, keeping in mind that I do all of this on phones or computers that are physically housed in the United States, and my primary target is United States audiences. First, you're going to pre-make a list of some of the top and upper mid-tier creators in the niche that you intend to put your model in. Second, you're going to create a Facebook page, not an account, a page for the model. You can use an existing Facebook account for this. I do recommend doing so if you can. You're not going to post on the Facebook page, but it will matter for step 6. Step 3, create a Metricool account on any browser on any device. You will be using this to post your reels and carousels for the most part. Step 4, create an Instagram account on a US iPhone 12 or later with a US SIM card using an aged Gmail. Step 5, season that Instagram by spending 15 to 30 minutes a day for 2 or 3 days, following creators from step 1 and engaging with their posts. This is a way of priming the Instagram content delivery algorithm. It's more likely to serve your content to people who follow the people you follow, and it uses that as one of the factors to determine what audience to serve your content to at first, which can matter a lot for reasons that I'm about to explain. Step 6, you're going to convert the Instagram account to a creator account. Step 7, you're going to link the Instagram account to the Facebook page you created in step 2. And step 8, you're going to link the Instagram and Facebook account to Metricool and post exclusively through there. I go over what Metricool is and how to use it in our video, The Best-Selling Software for OFM Organic Social in 2025. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, check that video out after this one.
You almost certainly manage models with legitimate influencer potential. Creators who can attract millions of followers and reach the top 0.01% on OFM. And now, Milky is officially reopening our consulting service to help your models reach that potential. Here's how it works. You fill out our consulting application. It's the first link in the description. It takes less than 2 minutes, and you'll get a follow-up email with all the information that you need to get started. Then you get a focused 60-minute strategy call with yours truly that includes the following: top to bottom evaluation of a model's current social media presence, the best possible niche for that model, plus how to establish and differentiate that model within that niche, research for the model, including a spreadsheet of the top creators and highest performing content in that niche, a full go-to-market brand strategy with aesthetics, personality, and repeatable content formats, and finally, a creative operations audit where I give you Milky's best practices to scale creative output without burning out your model and your team. And you get to keep a recording of our call to easily share with your team, plus all the research I do for your model. So if you are serious about building million-dollar models, book your consult right now through the first link in the description. And now, back to the video.
Before I break down the actual process for success, we've got to start with a few core principles, starting with Principle 1, brand. Brand is the foundation of everything we are about to discuss, and although I have covered it extensively in other videos, I'm going to provide a quick definition so we're all on the same page. So, what do I mean when I talk about brand in the context of social media, specifically OnlyFans? For simplicity's sake, brand can be boiled down to 2 things. 1, the creator's identity, their aesthetic presentation, their voice, their personality, and their ideas. And 2, the audience's feelings towards the creator's identity. And when you combine those 2 things, you get brand. Think about your favorite content creators. You probably started watching them because you liked what they had to say. But in most cases, there are lots of people saying very similar things or doing very similar things and expressing very similar opinions all the time. You kept watching your favorite creators and you began to appreciate them more because of who they are and how they said it. A phenomenal example of a fully realized brand is somebody that everybody in this business knows, Andrew Tate. In some sense, Andrew Tate is visually more or less interchangeable with every other alpha male or hustler type influencer in this ecosystem, even if he is kind of the template for that. If you just scroll OnlyFans Manager Instagram pages, there's an endless parade of guys wearing suits 2 sizes too small and standing in front of Bugattis and private jets. And if that's all Andrew Tate had to offer was that image with no substance, you wouldn't even know his name. He talks about things that lots of other people talk about, the decline of Western society, morality, entrepreneurship, women, etc. But it's the way that he says it that consistently goes viral and gives him that celebrity influencer status. He has a larger-than-life personality. He's very bold, he's charismatic, he's confrontational, and he's at times genuinely absolutely hilarious. And as a result, everyone who knows about Andrew Tate has this immediate gut response when they hear his name. Your liberal aunt hates Andrew Tate as much as your terminally online alt-right nephew loves Andrew Tate. And that's brand. His unique identity and the presentation of his ideas, plus the response it creates in whoever's viewing it. Principle 2 is interest-based media. The next basic principle that you need to understand is that a majority of social media is now passive and interest-based. This was not always the case. Back when Instagram launched, and for the first 10 years of its life, it was active and search-based, meaning that if you wanted to see or learn about a topic from an account that you didn't follow, you had to actively search for it. That's why hashtags existed. You could tag your content with something like dolphins. And if someone was searching for a picture of dolphins, your post might pop up. Now, the software that undergirds Instagram has gotten sophisticated enough that it can automatically detect the type of content you upload based on visuals, audio, and embedded text. And then it automatically serves that content to the people who have demonstrated an interest in it through passive content consumption. So instead of putting hashtag dolphin on your vacation photos in the Bahamas or whatever, now Instagram recognizes automatically that you took a picture of a dolphin, and it serves it to users that they have identified as dolphin enthusiasts as soon as they open the app. This is a huge difference because now users aren't making conscious decisions about what they consume. They're just eating whatever slop the algorithm feeds them when they open the app. And your job as the creator or director is to make sure that they eat your slop. So the question is, how do we do that? And that brings us to principle 3, niche. Now, you're probably thinking, Francis, I know what niche is. I don't need to hear this. I'm smart. But I would put money on you having no idea what it actually means to niche down, because this is probably the single most misused, misunderstood word in our entire industry. So I'm going to spend a bit of time defining what niche actually means in the year of our Lord 2025 in the context of social media, because it's essential to everything else I'm about to say. Let's start with the dictionary definition and go from there. The first definition you get from Google is a specialized segment of the market for a particular product or service. And I'd say that definition is pretty close to perfect for our purposes. The product or service in this case is digital intimacy delivered via OnlyFans, and the market is going to be whatever subset of the demand for that service makes sense for your model. The operative word in this definition is specialize, because social media is now passive and interest-based. The more specialized you get, the more likely you are to reach your target audience. And the opposite is also true. The more generic you are, the more likely you are not to get served to anyone at all. And it might just sound like I'm arguing semantics for the sake of being pedantic.
Shallow and pedantic.
I agree as well. Shallow and pedantic.
But I would be willing to bet that you've probably noticed a huge fall off in reach across many or all of your models this year. And I'm about to tell you exactly why that's happened and how to fix it. The reason people in our industry don't know what niche means anymore is simple. In the early days of OnlyFans, niche was just how you would describe the model's physical appearance. A niche could be something like big boobs or goth or midget. And because there was way less competition and an insane amount of demand, that actually worked for a while. But that's not the case anymore, and continuing to think and behave that way is a losing proposition. Our industry changes very rapidly because the internet is basically jet fuel for cultural acceleration. The natural progression of the internet means that even if something starts as a niche interest, over time, and often quite fast, specializations within those niches develop, and what was originally a niche becomes an entire category. For instance, think about something like Minecraft. When Minecraft Alpha launched in 2009, there were only a few thousand players. If you made Minecraft content for YouTube, it would be accurate to say that was a niche, and you wouldn't have had very much competition. But today, Minecraft has over 200 million active monthly players, and almost 2 million people have streamed Minecraft on Twitch in the last year. Calling Minecraft a niche today would be like calling the entire country of Brazil a niche. It's obviously no longer an accurate descriptor. Minecraft is now a massive category of content, and today, a niche within that category might be something super specific like survival mode, any percent speedruns on a particular seed, or 8-bit pixel art in creative mode, or something like that. I don't actually play Minecraft. It's not my brand of autism. In the same way, your model's physical traits are no longer truly a niche because the market for all physical niches is hypersaturated, and it's only going to get more saturated with AI content. And you have to get more specific and incorporate not just physical appearance, but personality and interest and skills. Think about it this way. If you're starting a model from zero, you are competing with every other female on Instagram for attention, not just OnlyFans models. Every girl who has ever posted a pic with cleavage is competing for attention with your model. And on top of that, every physical niche, from barely legal to double amputee with Down syndrome, can be flooded with AI influencers in an instant as soon as the market recognizes an opportunity. You like that one? For the sake of time, just believe me when I say you can no longer rely on good looks and generic content anymore. You are going to have to get creative. I'm going to explain how to select the right niche for your model in part 3, but there's one more concept that I need to explain before I do, because it's key to making that determination. And that's principle 4, differentiation and TAM. total addressable market. I'm sticking these together because they're deeply interrelated concepts. Differentiation is something that you've almost certainly noticed or intuitively understand, but you probably haven't spent a lot of time thinking about. So much of OnlyFans marketing strategy, if you can even call it that, is just copying trends and content from other creators. And look, there's a time and place for that, but it's never going to get you where you want to go long term. Instead, you need to build celebrity. It's obvious and self-evident that the best position for any business to be in is to be a monopoly producer of a good or service. Monopolies are so overpowered that in most parts of the world, they're actually outlawed. It's not a coincidence that the largest companies in the world are the ones who have figured out how to skirt around these regulations. For example, NVIDIA produces over 90% of the world's discrete GPUs and recently became the single most valuable company in the world as a direct result. To build a true competitor to NVIDIA would take trillions of dollars in capital, the best chip architects in the world, the best industrial engineers to build the best foundries, and it would still take years, maybe decades, to catch up. The opposite of a monopoly would be a business in an incredibly competitive industry with very low barrier to entry in terms of skills or resources. And the classic example of the opposite of a monopoly is a restaurant. Virtually anyone can get a loan and open a restaurant. And the instant they do, they enter a ferocious competition with every single other restaurant within, say, 10 square miles of them. Something like 20% of all restaurants fail and go out of business within their first 12 months. So monopoly is the goal, but how do you establish a monopoly in a market as competitive as social media? In media and creative endeavors, monopolies are established through differentiation. A great example of this concept are character actors. Think about an actress like, for instance, Helena Bonham Carter. It doesn't matter what movie she appears in or even what decade that movie was made in. You know 10,000% beyond a shadow of a doubt when you see her on a movie poster that her character is going to be a creepy psycho bitch who has a really weird but oddly touching romantic attachment to the male lead. That's her thing. For over 2 decades, Helena Bonham Carter had what could easily be described as a monopoly on the psychotic goth girlfriend role or archetype in major Hollywood productions. In fact, you could make the argument she invented that archetype. That is the goal. You win on socials by standing out from the crowd. So how do we determine if a niche is sufficiently differentiated for us to establish a dominant market position within it? How do we become Helena Bonham Carter instead of opening the 50,000th pizza restaurant in New York City? Total addressable market, or TAM. TAM is a broader business concept that I'm borrowing for social media marketing because it maps really well onto this topic. It's best defined as the total revenue opportunity or total demand for a product or service if a business captured 100% of the market, which is what we're trying to do, right? Create monopolies. TAM is usually a very educated guess rather than a precise figure since markets are in constant flux. So if you had a total monopoly on, say, the whole OnlyFans market based on OF's projected revenue for this year, I would estimate that the TAM is between $7 and $8 billion. For our purposes, TAM will be measured in attention rather than dollars, since it's hard to make precise estimates of how followers translate to revenue. So we're going to measure TAM with attention using followership as the metric. So let's combine these two concepts, differentiation and TAM. The whole point of developing a brand is that it is the closest thing to establishing a monopoly within a given domain. Something like 15% of all American women aged 18 to 24 have made OnlyFans content. That's millions of competitors, and your goal is to stand out, to do something totally different. If you're going after a monopoly, intuitively, you might think, well, if I want to make the most possible money, I should go after the niche with the biggest TAM. But you can't build a monopoly by starting with the biggest market because you're going to get crushed by the existing players in that market, even if you copy exactly what they do. You could have the recipe for every McDonald's menu item, but if you try to start a McDonald's clone, they're going to absolutely mop the floor with you through their functionally infinite pool of capital, economies of scale, and brand recognition. It would be like a minnow trying to eat a whale. Instead, you want to become a big fish in a small pond. In both social media and business, you build a monopoly by identifying a tiny part of one market, figuring out what the customers in that market want, dominating that market, and then leveraging what you learn and the relationship you've built with your customers, or in this case, your audience, to grow and occupy more and more space in the pond and to muscle out the other fish. You need to think of every new model like a startup and determine what market you want to compete in. The TAM for, say, gamer e-girls is huge, probably hundreds of millions of potential fans. Amaranth, one of the biggest OnlyFans creators in that category, pulls down millions, if not not tens of millions of dollars per month. But she's been doing it since 2016. She has millions of followers across half a dozen platforms, etc., etc. And you absolutely can build that level of success with the process I'm about to share with you. But it takes years of consistent effort, and you don't start there. When you're starting from zero, you need to think way smaller. Instead of trying to tackle the entire market of gamer e-girl, you should identify a small, underserved market within that category. Maybe that's 19-year-old esoteric neo-Nazi e-girl who exclusively reviews retro indie horror games while doing ASMR. And for all I know, there's probably a handful of girls doing that already. But it will be way easier for you to create the best one because you will have very few competitors and you'll have more capital than them. And as you dominate that market, you can start introducing new games like indie survival games, and you start picking up market share from that niche, and then you repeat that process, growing larger and larger. And before you know it, your model is the Helena Bonham Carter of right-wing gamer e-girls. Congratulations.
When Super Creator reached out to me asking me to test out their CRM along with their integrated AI chatbot, Izzy, I didn't expect much. I've been very skeptical of AI chatting. I assumed that LLMs would hallucinate and create continuity issues, that the conversations would be low quality, and most importantly, that an AI would never be able to outperform human chatters when it comes to sales, which is what matters most. And on all three of these counts, I was dead wrong. After completing the onboarding process, where Super Creator ingests every detail about your model from eye color to conversational style, I personally tested Izzy on a free page with over 80,000 subscribers, and I was absolutely blown away. Izzy not only flawlessly imitated the model's personality and texting style, it had context-sensitive conversations with zero hallucinations, with over 2,000 fans in a single day. And it sold more PPVs in that first 24 hours than I had sold on that page in the previous 3 months combined. And that's not a fluke. There are over 25,000 creators and agencies that are using Super Creator today, and Izzy has sold over $180 million of PPVs since its release just a few months ago. If you followed me for a while, you know that I only advocate for products that Milky actually uses and believes in, and Super Creator falls firmly into that category. So if you're an agency that's looking to dramatically cut chatting costs without sacrificing chat quality or revenue, Izzy is the solution, and I strongly recommend that you check it out today. And they're giving my viewers an insane deal. If you click the first link in the description and use promo code Francis at checkout, you will get 30% off plus 2,000 free AI messages to see for yourself just how powerful Izzy is. Now, back to the video.
Now you understand the fundamental principles and concepts necessary to build socials up from scratch. Now, how do we put those principles into action to build our model of brand from zero? To make this easier to follow, we're going to build a go-to-market strategy in real time for a hypothetical model. We'll call her Alice. We will break the process into 3 steps. First is niche selection. Second is research. Third is execution. Niche selection is the most critical part of this process, and it should ideally happen before you even make your first piece of content. There are 3 considerations for niche selection. First is authenticity, passion, and expertise. Second is total addressable market. And third is difficulty, resource intensiveness, and replicability. Let's start with authenticity and passion. As I said in the previous section, Instagram is largely passive and interest-based now, and the more specific of an interest you target, the more likely you are to reach that audience. Authenticity matters a lot here. The easiest way to reach your target audience is to understand them, and by far the easiest way to understand an audience is to be that audience. I make my content for entrepreneurs in the digital intimacy industry because I am an entrepreneur in the digital intimacy industry. When I got started in OnlyFans management, I had to learn everything about organic social from scratch through trial and error. So when I make content, I basically just think, what content do I wish existed when I was learning all of this? So step 1 is simple. Talk to the model. Figure out what she's passionate about, what she can do and or talk about on camera for hours on end. The obvious dream scenario is that your model is passionate and knowledgeable about some male-dominated niche or activity like competitive fighting games or hunting or deep-sea fishing. More likely, though, your model's greatest passion is smoking weed and watching Love Island. The good news is that in the modern media landscape, there truly is an audience for everything. So if your model can pump out entertaining, engaging content, getting stoned and yapping about that week's episode of her favorite reality TV show, then God bless her, that's exactly what she should do. For the sake of example though, let's say that our hypothetical model Alice really loves cooking. Now, we're going to make a rough estimation of that category's TAM to figure out how niched within the cooking category we need to go. As you might imagine, cooking is a massive category. After all, who doesn't love food? I asked ChatGPT to come up with a rough estimate of the aggregate TAM for all cooking content, and it came up with 1.1 to 1.5 billion Instagram users. Now, it's impossible to perfectly measure TAM for socials, but the conclusion that it arrived at and the methodology by which it arrived at that conclusion seemed very reasonable to me. So let's assume it's correct. Now, 1.5 billion is way too big of a target to start. That's over half of all Instagram users. That would be the same level of difficulty as getting everyone in mainland China to follow your model. So let's narrow that down substantially. I think a good rule of thumb for a category this broad is around a 5 million user TAM. So the question becomes, what type of cooking does Alice enjoy? Or maybe what's a type of cooking she'd like to learn? To make this simple, let's say that Alice is an ex-Mormon from Utah, and she wants to share her passion for Mormon cuisine. Using the same methodology as the previous prompt, ChatGPT tells us that the TAM for Mormon cooking is 3 to 7 million, which is right in our sweet spot. Strategically, Mormon cuisine works great for a number of reasons besides TAM. It's a thoroughly American cuisine, which means it will be easy to build a US audience, and ex-Mormons also have a strong predisposition towards shame and guilt-based psychosexual pathologies. In other words, they're highly susceptible to sexual messaging. It's important to consider factors like this when selecting your niche. This is why it's so beneficial to understand your target audience. You'll know all their little quirks, the language they use, etc., to present authentically as one of them, which will deepen their relationship with the creator. I'm going to run through the next factor quickly since it's pretty simple and intuitive to understand. And that's difficulty, resource intensiveness, and replicability. This is a very obvious but important practical consideration. Difficulty is how hard the content is to make, and resource intensiveness is how much it costs, both in time and money, to produce it. Alice is going to be a humble Mormon tradwife, so resource-wise, all she needs is a kitchen, some cookware, ingredients, and a good attitude, most of which she almost certainly already has or can acquire at very low cost. Most of your resource commitment will be time. Cooking itself can be a time-consuming process, and there's a skill to capturing and editing it in a way that's engaging and visually pleasing. Overall, I'd say cooking content is on the lower end of the difficulty spectrum to produce a lot of, and you can easily supplement actual cooking with personality content or cooking humor or cooking history or something like that if Alice doesn't feel like cooking on a given day. This is not true of every niche. Your model's content strategy needs to be based around an activity or topic she can produce lots of iterations and repetitions of, and not all things are equally easy to capture on film. If your model is passionate about skydiving, that's visually interesting, sufficiently narrow, and a super cool niche. But if she doesn't own a plane, or at least she can't do it frequently enough to make it the core of her content strategy, you're probably going to have to pick something else. So we've picked our niche. Now it's time to research. Now we can really start digging into the specifics of Alice's niche and what we're going to do to differentiate her from the rest of the competition. That starts with research, and I'm going to give you the exact process I use both for Milky's past models and our current consulting clients. The first thing that we want to do is find the most successful Mormon cooking creators, and the easiest way to do that is to put ChatGPT on either deep research or thinking mode, depending on which model you're using, and use this exact prompt. Find, list, and provide links to the Instagram pages of the most popular Mormon cooking creators on Instagram. Obviously, for your niche, you'll put in something other than Mormon cooking. ChatGPT will then produce a list to the best of its ability based on context like bio, news articles featuring the creators, and following count. And you might not always get a perfect result on the first try, but in my experience, it's very accurate and has been really on point lately now that I've performed this search a few dozen times for different niches. Once you have that list, you're going to use SortFeed to find the all-time most viewed content on each page and add it to a spreadsheet. If you don't know what SortFeed is, it's a Chrome extension that allows you to sort Instagram Reels on a given page by views, and it allows you to mass export them directly to a spreadsheet. Insanely useful tool that I use almost every day, and it costs like $40 lifetime. I'll link it in the description. I like to use anything over 1 million views as a benchmark, but for smaller niches, you might need to adjust to lower view counts. And then you just rinse and repeat this process until you have a list of 250 or so Reels, and then you watch them. We're doing two things here. The first is figuring out what our format is going to be. Format here just refers to the structure of our content. Since we're going to be making a lot of content, we need to have a formula for reproducing it that is simple and repeatable enough for the model to do it day in and day out. You don't need to stick to a formula religiously. In fact, especially in the beginning, you need to do a lot of testing to figure out what structure works best. But once you find a winner, stick with it and improve specific elements rather than changing the entire format. Hopefully that makes sense. The second thing we're doing is a practice I picked up from Rory Sutherland, which he calls reverse benchmarking. Regular benchmarking is looking at your competitors, picking out what you like most about them, and then imitating those strategies. But if you do that, you're not differentiating yourselves from them. You're just trying to compete in exactly the same way with someone who already has a superior market position, not what you want to be doing. What we are trying to do is figure out what the gaps in their strategy are, what they might be doing poorly or missing out on, and we go after that. In the case of Mormon cooking, as you might imagine, it's all made by and for Mormon housewives doing standard run-of-the-mill cooking content, a low-quality, chopped-up version of what you might see on the Food Network. Figuring out how to differentiate and make better content will be easy. Instead of making the same cookie-cutter videos as everyone else in this niche, we're going to target male audiences by showing some skin, we're going to sprinkle in some risque jokes, and we're going to close out every video with the model serving the meal to the camera, as though the viewer is her husband or boyfriend, in order to play into that domestic fantasy. These are tried and true principles I like to lean on, but the only limit on how you choose to differentiate your models is your own creativity. I find it's best to let the specific creative decisions you make around differentiation be guided by your model's personality. So if she's naturally funny and flirty, lean into that and have her make some off-the-cuff jokes. If she's naturally shy and reserved, play into that with lots of blushing and little giggles and quiet submissive overtones. Authenticity is key, because the model will be making lots of these, and the closer it is to her true personality, the better. Quick note, because I know some of you are thinking it. If your model isn't talented or interesting or has a shitty personality, I've got news for you. That applies to like 90% of musicians, public figures, and Hollywood actors and actresses. As long as she can take instruction, you can just make up a personality for her, which, by the way, is what the entire entertainment industry is built around. The job of a talent agent or manager in Hollywood is turning some of the most uninteresting and talentless people to have ever walked the face of the earth into megastars. Have you ever watched the Jessica Alba movie? It's impossible not to notice how garbage she is at the job. But her managers and agents managed to secure her a 20-year career with multiple blockbuster titles. Believe me, it can be done if you're willing to do the work. Research should be a constant process. Always be on the lookout for better hooks, small improvements to improve average watch time, etc. But that's the important stuff for day one. At this point, you know what the competition within your niche looks like. You have a solid idea of the content format you're going to present. Now it's time to execute. And this is where all the work we just did, establishing foundational knowledge, strategizing, and research, gets synthesized into actual usable content. I'm assuming that everyone watching this has some understanding of how script writing, batch shooting content, and video editing works. But just in case, I'm giving away Milky's entire Creative Ops playbook for free as a PDF with an accompanying video walkthrough. This guide covers exactly how we produce content for all of our models and consulting clients, and you can get it for free by clicking the second link in the description and signing up for our email list. Because you can just download the guide, I'm not going to cover the entire production process itself in detail, just the process that you need to win. And it's super simple. For new accounts, execution just comes down to testing stuff out. No matter how good your content plan and strategy are, ultimately, when you're starting from nothing, you won't know what actually works until you actually produce content. Volume is super important here. The more repetitions you do, the more iterations your primary content format that you can run through, the faster you'll learn what does and doesn't work. This does not mean that you should just pump out dog shit content and cross your fingers. You still need to stick to the whole strategy that you developed and apply all of the psychological and structural principles that make good content, which I've talked about in this video and at length in my other videos. It just means that the best way to learn is by doing. So for a final concrete example, let's come back to Alice and her Mormon cooking videos. When I talk about testing, what am I actually testing? And in our first 30 videos with Alice, I might test 10 different hooks. Cooking has a ton of cool hook opportunities. Anything from your standard, "Hi, I'm Alice, and today we're cooking funeral potatoes," to something more visually interesting, like putting the phone in the back of the oven and sliding out the pan to reveal Alice. Get creative and play around with it. I might test to see if dessert recipes perform better than dinner recipes. I might test if the fans enjoy it more when Alice calls them boyfriend or husband. I might test up-tempo music with fast cuts versus smooth jazz with longer shots. I might test any number of lighting setups, camera angles, outfits, backdrops, makeup styles, and so on until I have good information on any or all of those factors. And the more that I'm sure that any given factor increases the likelihood that an individual piece of content performs well, the more that I will ensure we replicate that thing in every reel. This iterative process is the most important part of execution because it's the only way that you can reliably collect information about what is and is not working. And the amazing thing about socials is that you get all that information extremely fast. You will know if a reel hit within a day of posting in most cases. There's almost certainly a more principled way to design these experiments. So if you're more mathematically inclined, I'm sure you could come up with like a strict performance measurement criteria with some KPIs, but truthfully, intuition has always worked best for me. Once the content is shot and edited, in this case, I would probably have Alice batch create like a month's worth of reels so that we have a decent backlog. Then we'll start posting them on her seasoned Instagram account by scheduling them on Metricool, one per day to start and then ramping up as the model gets more comfortable. Oh, before I forget, we will also push out one carousel a day. In this case, we would probably do a combination of high-quality photos of Alice cooking in skimpy clothes and maybe some sexy recipe cards or something like that. I'm not going to get into precise mechanics here, but carousels are extremely underrated and a fantastic way to establish deeper relationships with followers as you grow, since they get served primarily to followers. And when carousels do escape containment and go viral, they tend to really explode. And that's really it. This final phase is all about experimentation, learning what works, then replicating it and improving it ad infinitum. If you made it here, congratulations. You now have an absurd competitive advantage when it comes to building an organic following on Instagram for your OnlyFans models. This is the exact process that I've used to bring accounts from 0 to over 1 million followers and billions of impressions with 0 paid ads, 0 existing socials, or any other hacks. And while I can't promise overnight success, I can promise that if you stick with everything I just explained, your model's following will grow consistently, and she will develop a dedicated fan base primed to open their wallets on OnlyFans. Just a quick reminder, if you got value out of this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to check out Super Creator, the first link in the description, download our Creative Ops Playbook, the second link in the description, and if you have a topic that you'd like me to cover, drop it in the comments, and there's a good chance I will. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.